The void of space was a vast canvas, a masterpiece of endless darkness punctuated by cold, unblinking stars. Yet this tranquil facade belied the simmering tension that now gripped the galaxy. For centuries, the Galactic Council had ruled with an iron hand masked by diplomacy, their laws stitching together a fragile peace. But peace, like a spider's web, held only until the first tremor. In the galactic capital of Erindra Prime, the council chamber shimmered with an ethereal glow. Holographic displays floated like ghosts, casting faint blue light on the polished obsidian floors. Representatives from dozens of species filled the tiers of the vast amphitheater, their forms ranging from crystalline humanoids to serpentine entities cloaked in shimmering scales. The air buzzed with a cacophony of whispers, debates, and accusations, yet it all carried the same thread: Earth. They were a primitive species, isolated on a planet they barely survived, snarled General Krenos of the Royan Empire, his emerald eyes narrowing. His scaled hand slammed the table before him, the impact reverberating through the chamber. Now their ships prowl trade routes unchallenged. They mock us. Mockery, or self-preservation, countered a Farron diplomat, her tone cool and measured. Her luminous form seemed to pulse with irritation. We have long ignored them. Perhaps they've chosen to grow in our absence. They've grown too bold, Krenos spat, his forked tongue darting angrily. Letting them continue this unchecked threatens the order we've bled to create. A hush fell as the central dais rotated, revealing the council's presiding leader. Ancient and stoic, she rose, her metallic robes catching the ambient light, turning her into a figure of molten authority. Enough, she said, her voice a delicate blade slicing through the noise. This is not the time for conjecture. Facts only. A holographic projection illuminated the room, a sleek black vessel, unlike anything seen before. It moved with fluid precision, its hull defying known alloys and technologies. Human-made, she said, her voice low, sending ripples of unease across the chamber. Intercepted near neutral space, its intent was unprovoked observation. What of their planet? A delegate hissed from the shadows. Surely they wouldn't risk aggression without proper defenses. A silence hung, heavy and foreboding. The humans' homeworld had long been dismissed as a backwater, their survival attributed to stubbornness and the peculiar hostility of their ecosystem. But as this mysterious ship disappeared from view, the question burned. What had Earth become? Far across the void, nestled beneath layers of rock and steel, Earth's command bunker pulsed with quiet intensity. The air was tinged with the scent of ozone and machinery, the muffled hum of servers providing a steady undercurrent to the orchestrated chaos. Technicians moved between stations, their whispers sharp and deliberate. Every flickering monitor, every satellite feed, told the story of a galaxy on the verge of realization. Commander Alexander Voss leaned over the central tactical display, his hands braced against its edges. The screen illuminated his face in pale blue hues, accentuating the sharp lines of his jaw and the faint shadows beneath his eyes. His uniform, dark and unadorned, spoke of function over vanity, a stark contrast to the glittering displays of power favored by the Galactic Council. "They've convened," Lieutenant Dara Kell reported, her voice crisp but low. She handed him a tablet, its surface alive with intercepted Council communications. "Word is spreading fast. They know we're no longer standing still." Voss grunted, scanning the intelligence with the practiced eye of a strategist. The weight of centuries lay unspoken between them. Humanity had clawed its way from the brink of extinction too many times to ever trust the hand of peace. Every war, every disaster, had tempered them into something the galaxy had never encountered, a species born for survival. "They'll send someone," he said at last, his voice as firm as the granite walls around them. "A diplomat, perhaps, or a scout. They'll test the waters. And when they do?" Dara's gaze locked onto his, a flicker of unease in her dark eyes. Voss straightened, his expression inscrutable. "We'll let them see enough to think they understand, but not enough to realize the truth." The truth. The word lingered in the air like the sharp scent of steel. It was a truth born not of malice, but necessity. For decades, Earth had rebuilt itself in silence, its advancements hidden beneath layers of misdirection and shadow. What the galaxy had once dismissed as a fragile, primitive world was now a fortress, bristling with ingenuity. "Commander," a young officer called out, his voice tinged with urgency. "Unidentified object approaching the outer system. Trajectory aligns with Galactic Council sectors." Voss's brow furrowed. "How long?" 72 hours, assuming no deviation." "Pull up the specs," he ordered, stepping toward the larger display. The room dimmed as a three-dimensional model of the object materialized. It was unmistakable, a council envoy ship, sleek and ceremonial, its hull gleaming with diplomatic arrogance. "They've come to talk," Dara said, a faint smirk tugging at her lips. "How kind of them." "They've come to measure," Voss corrected, his tone cold, "and they won't like what they find." 3 days later, the envoy ship pierced Earth's atmosphere like a silver dagger. Its descent was graceful, deliberate, as if to remind humanity of the sophistication they faced. Crowds gathered in cities and fields, necks craning to catch a glimpse of the first alien vessel to land on Earth in centuries. The ship's surface shimmered in the midday sun, casting shifting reflections across the ground. Inside the command bunker, Voss watched the descent on a live feed. He stood still, arms crossed, the tension in the room pressing against his chest like a coiled spring. Every technician, every officer seemed to hold their breath. "They'll expect to intimidate us," Dara said quietly, standing beside him. "To assert dominance." "They don't understand," Voss replied, his eyes never leaving the screen. "But they will." The envoy landed in a wide, open field outside the Rockies, its landing gear hissing as it made contact with the Earth. Moments later, the hatch opened, and the delegation emerged, tall, elegant figures adorned in ornate garments that caught the sunlight like polished glass. Their steps were deliberate, calculated. These were beings accustomed to power. Voss stepped out to meet them, flanked by a contingent of Earth's best. The cold mountain air nipped at his face, carrying the faint scent of pine and damp earth. The alien delegation halted as he approached, their leader, a lithe figure with iridescent skin, regarding him with cool curiosity. "Humans," the alien leader began, her voice melodic, yet edged with authority. "Your recent actions have drawn the Council's attention. We are here to understand your intentions." Voss's lips twitched, though not into a smile. "Our intentions are simple," he said, his voice steady. "To survive." The alien's gaze sharpened. "Your actions suggest more. Unprovoked patrols, advancements that challenge known limitations. These are not the behaviors of a species content with mere survival." Voss stepped closer, the weight of his presence palpable. Survival isn't contentment. It's knowing that when the storm comes, you're not the one swept away. The alien leader tilted her head, as if dissecting his words. "The Council seeks peace, Commander, but should peace fail, understand this. The galaxy has seen your kind before. They did not last." Voss's eyes darkened, his voice low and unyielding. "Then it's a good thing we're not like them." The silence that followed was electric, the kind that preceded the crash of thunder. The envoy departed soon after, leaving Earth in the grip of a quiet tension. In the bunker, as the last alien ship disappeared into the sky, Voss turned to his team. "They'll choose war," he said, his voice calm but resolute. "And when they do, we'll show them how it's done." The silence after the envoy's departure was a living thing, thick and suffocating. In the war room of the command bunker, every screen glowed with the faint hum of readiness. Commander Alexander Voss remained motionless, his gaze fixed on the tactical display showing the now vacant skies above Earth. His mind, however, raced with 1,000 calculations. "They'll choose war," he had said, and the truth of it lingered in the air like smoke after a fire. He turned sharply, the faint rustle of his uniform cutting through the tense quiet. "Status on the envoy's trajectory." Lieutenant Darakel, ever efficient, leaned over her station. The glow of her monitor illuminated her focused face. They've cleared our outer orbit. No deviations from their intended path. Good, Voss said, though his tone carried no relief. He stepped closer to the holographic map dominating the center of the room. The galaxy sprawled across it, a living mosaic of light and shadow. Earth was a faint blue dot, insignificant in scale, but in this moment, the epicenter of the universe's attention. They'll deliver their report to the Council. The question is, what's next? Dara tilted her head, the faint scent of coffee clinging to her uniform as she studied the display. If they underestimated us, their response will be delayed. Diplomatic wrangling, more meetings. But if they truly grasp what we've become... She let the words hang. They'll send a fleet, Voss finished, his voice flat. The room absorbed his statement like a sponge, and the weight of inevitability pressed against every soul present. "Commander," a junior officer called from across the room, his voice tinged with urgency. "We've intercepted fragments of communication from the envoy ship. It's heavily encrypted, but initial patterns suggest their transmission is marked as high priority." Voss's lips tightened. "Of course it is. They're rattled." He moved to the central console, the cool surface vibrating faintly beneath his fingers. His reflection stared back at him in the glossy black, a man carved by duty and sacrifice. Around him, the bunker thrummed with life, the faint scent of ozone from overworked circuits mingling with the stale air. Every sound, every light, was a reminder that humanity's survival depended on these moments of calculated preparation. "Patch me through to orbital command," Voss ordered, his voice cutting through the din. "If they're sending messages, we need eyes on every entry point to this system. I want to know if so much as a speck of cosmic dust crosses our borders." As the room snapped into action, Voss turned back to Dara. "And the fleet?" "Fully operational," she replied without hesitation. "The ironclad Dawn is undergoing final calibrations, but she's ready if needed." Voss nodded, his mind already racing ahead. The ironclad Dawn, Earth's flagship, was a marvel of human ingenuity, rugged, powerful, and armed with technology born from decades of clandestine research. She wasn't just a ship, she was a statement. "They'll see her soon enough," Voss murmured, his words almost lost in the hum of the room. Far across the galaxy, the envoy ship entered the neutral zone surrounding Arindra Prime. Its sleek hull glinted faintly against the endless void, a whisper of light in the sea of darkness. Within its walls, the delegation spoke in hushed, urgent tones. The leader, her iridescent skin dimmed with unease, stared out of the viewport at the approaching capital. "Primitive, they said," she murmured, her voice carrying the weight of doubt. "Backward, yet they stood before us without fear." "They're cunning," replied one of her subordinates, his voice low and sharp. "But cunning won't save them when the Council acts." Her gaze darkened, her reflection distorted by the curve of the glass. "I hope for their sake you're right." The council chambers were already ablaze with debate when the envoy arrived. The holographic displays flickered with activity, projections of human ships and intercepted communications dominating the space. The Farron leader stood at the center, her imposing figure framed by the swirling light. "They show signs of technological growth," the envoy leader reported, her voice firm but cautious. "Their fleet is small, but advanced. Their commander spoke of survival, not conquest." "And you believe them?" General Krenos sneered, his reptilian features twisting with disdain. "They've built weapons, not words. They prepare for war." "Perhaps because they know it's coming," the envoy countered, her words like a blade cutting through his arrogance. "We sent no ambassadors to guide them, no aid to support them. Only silence. What did we expect?" "Enough," the council leader interjected, her voice carrying the authority of centuries. "We cannot ignore the risk they pose. If left unchecked, humanity's defiance will inspire others. Balance must be preserved." "Then we act," Krenos growled, his claws tapping against the polished surface before him. "Send a fleet. Crush their spirit before it spreads." The leader's gaze swept the chamber, her luminous eyes unblinking. "So be it. Prepare the armada." Back on Earth, the air in the command bunker grew heavier, as intelligence reports trickled in. Satellite feeds captured faint distortions near the edge of the solar system. Ships, too distant for precise identification, but unmistakably moving toward Earth. "Commander," Dara said, her voice tense, "we have incoming." Voss's jaw tightened as he stared at the readings. "How many?" "Preliminary scans suggest a strike force. Small but fast. It's a test." Voss's eyes narrowed, his mind already mapping the battlefield. "They're measuring us, seeing how we respond." "What's the play?" Dara asked, her voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "We give them exactly what they expect," Voss said, his tone hard. "And then we take it away." He turned to the room, his voice rising above the hum of activity. "Activate the defense grid. Bring the fleet to readiness, but keep them in reserve. Let them think our surface defenses are all we have." The room came alive with movement, the faint clatter of keyboards, and the hum of engines rising like a symphony of preparation. Voss stepped back to the central display, his reflection now joined by dozens of others, all of them soldiers, engineers, and strategists united by a singular purpose. "They've chosen their path," he said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. His voice was calm, but beneath it lay the weight of inevitability. Now we show them where it leads. As the first signals of the alien fleet grew stronger, Earth's defenses roared to life. Automated turrets emerged from hidden silos, their sleek barrels gleaming in the dim light. High above, satellites aligned, their surfaces shimmering as they prepared to unleash concentrated beams of energy. The planet itself seemed to hold its breath. And in the shadows, hidden from even the most advanced sensors, humanity's true power waited, silent, unseen and ready to strike when the time was right. The stars above Earth seemed serene, oblivious to the storm brewing just beyond the solar system's edge. Yet deep within the command bunker, where the air hummed with the pulse of human ingenuity, serenity was a luxury no one could afford. Commander Alexander Voss stood before the holographic display, its pale blue glow casting angular shadows across his face. The alien fleet was closing in, faint markers on the screen, tiny harbingers of chaos. "ETA?" he asked, his voice carrying an edge that could cut steel. 2 hours, 43 minutes, Lieutenant Darakel replied, her fingers flying across her console. The faint hum of her station underscored her words, a steady rhythm amid the tension. "They've accelerated, likely to catch us off guard." "They'll find that difficult," Voss murmured, his eyes narrowing. He tapped a command, zooming in on the projections. The alien fleet moved like a school of predators, tight and deliberate, their formations exuding arrogance. But arrogance was brittle when met with precision. "Patch me through to orbital command." The air thickened as Voss waited for the line to connect. The muffled sound of machinery filled the room, blending with the faint metallic tang of recycled air. Finally, a voice crackled to life. "Orbital command here." "Activate the defense grid," Voss ordered. "Full camouflage protocols. Let them think we're vulnerable until it's too late." "Yes, Commander. Grid activation in progress." Above Earth, the planetary defense grid shimmered into being, a lattice of energy invisible to the naked eye. It stretched across the planet's upper atmosphere, its nodes humming with latent power. Below, concealed silos prepared their payloads, hidden weapons poised to awaken. The air buzzed with quiet menace, a predator coiled and ready to strike. "Sir," Dara said, her tone pulling him back to the present, "preliminary scans show a mixed fleet, standard assault cruisers and a few scout ships. No heavy artillery." Voss's lips curled into a faint, humorless smile. "They're testing the waters. They want to see how we bleed." "And what do we show them?" she asked, a flicker of anticipation in her voice. Voss turned, his gaze heavy with determination. "That we don't." The alien fleet broke into the system 2 hours later, their ships shimmering with the muted glow of advanced shielding. From the observation decks of their vessels, alien commanders gazed at Earth with a mix of disdain and curiosity. The planet looked unassuming, its blue-green surface a fragile speck against the vastness of space. On board the alien flagship Varnax Fury, General Krenos paced the command deck, his claws clicking against the polished floor. The tension in the room was palpable, though no one dared voice it. "Humans," he growled, his emerald eyes narrowing as he studied Earth on the view screen. "Primitive creatures playing with fire. Let's remind them how easily they can be extinguished." "Target acquired," an officer reported, their voice sharp and clipped. "Awaiting your command." "Begin the assault," Krenos snarled. "Show them the price of defiance." The alien ships unleashed their payloads, streams of plasma and kinetic projectiles streaking toward Earth like vengeful comets. The void erupted in violent light, the cold silence of space shattered by the sheer fury of their assault. Yet as the projectiles approached the planet's atmosphere, they struck something unseen. Explosions rippled harmlessly across the sky, dissipating in bursts of vivid energy. "What?" Krenos began, his voice sharp with disbelief. Earth's defense grid had awakened. The sky above the planet glowed with a faint aurora, a shimmering barrier of energy that deflected the alien onslaught with cold efficiency. Hidden weapon platforms activated, their silos opening like the maws of sleeping giants. Automated turrets turned skyward, their barrels glowing as they released a storm of counterfire. On the ironclad Dawn, Captain Elias Ward stood on the bridge, his jaw tight as he watched the battle unfold. The ship's crew moved with precision, their hands flying across consoles as they monitored the planet's defenses. "Sir, the grid's holding strong," an officer reported, his voice steady despite the chaos outside. "No breaches detected." Ward nodded, his gaze never leaving the tactical display. "Let them waste their fire. The more they give away, the less they'll have when we strike back." Back aboard Varnak's Fury, chaos reigned. Reports poured in as alien ships faltered under Earth's calculated response. Drones, sleek, black, and deadly, rose from hidden launch sites, swarming the alien fleet like a school of piranhas. They moved with eerie precision, targeting weak points in the enemy vessels. Engines sputtered and shields collapsed as the drones' attacks crippled ship after ship. Krenos' claws dug into the console before him, his composure fracturing. "Impossible!" he hissed. "This level of coordination, this technology, it's not—" "It's human," his second-in-command whispered, her voice tinged with unease. "They've been hiding it." The realization was as heavy as the silence that followed. Earth, the planet they had dismissed as insignificant, had become a force they hadn't anticipated. In the command bunker, Voss watched the battle unfold with a calm exterior that belied the storm within. Every explosion, every crippled ship, was a calculated step toward humanity's survival. Yet he knew this was only the beginning. "Commander," Dara said, her voice cutting through his thoughts. "Enemy formations are breaking. Their scouts are retreating." "Good," Voss replied, his tone measured. "Let them run, but disable their long-range communication before they go. I don't want them sending warnings." As orders were relayed, the atmosphere in the bunker shifted. The initial tension gave way to a quiet, focused intensity. They had weathered the first storm, but the horizon promised more. "They'll regroup," Dara said, her voice low but firm. "This was a test and we passed. But next time—" "They won't hold back," Voss finished, his gaze hard. "And neither will we." The alien fleet limped away, its remnants scattered like debris across the void. On Earth, as the skies cleared and the defense grid dimmed, a strange stillness settled. It was the calm after the storm, a fleeting moment before the next wave. In the darkness of space beyond the reach of human sensors, the Galactic Empire's main fleet stirred. Thousands of ships, their hulls gleaming like obsidian knives, awaited the call to war. And within their heart, a shadowy figure watched the reports from Earth with cold, calculating eyes. "They've made their move," the figure murmured, their voice as smooth as silk and as sharp as glass. "Now we make ours." On Earth, as Voss stood alone in the observation deck staring out at the stars, he felt the weight of what was coming. The faint scent of metal and fuel filled the air, mingling with the quiet hum of the shipyard below. "They'll come back," he said softly, his reflection merging with the endless void beyond. "And when they do, they'll learn we weren't playing games." The stars, distant and indifferent, offered no response. But Earth's silence spoke volumes. The command bunker was a hive of calculated chaos, its walls vibrating faintly with the pulse of Earth's hidden machinery. The stale air carried the faint tang of sweat and overheated circuits as officers and analysts worked tirelessly at their stations. Commander Alexander Voss stood at the helm of it all, his eyes fixed on the holographic display dominating the room. The remnants of the alien fleet had retreated, but the silence that followed was a false reprieve. "They'll regroup," he said, his voice a low rumble against the backdrop of controlled urgency. "And they'll come back stronger." Lieutenant Dara Kell stepped to his side, her dark eyes scanning the same data he studied. "If their full fleet arrives, even the ironclad Dawn won't hold them for long." "That's why we won't wait for them," Voss replied, his tone sharp enough to cut glass. He straightened, his presence commanding the attention of the room. "We take the fight to them before they're ready." The officers around him exchanged uneasy glances. It wasn't fear that rippled through the room, but the sheer weight of the gamble Voss was proposing. To strike now, with Earth's resources stretched thin and their defenses still recovering, was to court destruction. But to wait for the Empire's armada to descend was to guarantee it. "Sir?" an engineer began hesitantly, her voice cracking slightly. "What if they're already regrouping at their forward staging point? We could be walking into—" "Exactly what they want us to think," Voss interrupted, his eyes narrowing. "They'll expect us to fortify, to hunker down, but we won't play by their script." Dara tilted her head, her lips curling into a faint smile. "You've already planned this, haven't you?" Voss nodded. "Orbital Command has been mapping their likely fallback points. The most probable is just beyond the Oort cloud, where their scouts disappeared after the retreat." He turned to the room, his voice rising above the hum of equipment. "Prepare a strike force, 3 tactical wings, led by the ironclad Dawn. The drones will flank from the starboard sector, while our long-range artillery ships pin them down from behind. And I want our stealth fleet running interference. Their communications need to stay dark." The plan unfolded like clockwork. Voss's strategy wasn't just bold, it was meticulously crafted. Every move, every contingency had been calculated. The alien fleet, despite its technological superiority, relied heavily on coordination and communication. Disrupting that would be humanity's wedge into their armor. "Sir, we'll need a decoy," Dara said, her voice cutting through the room's controlled buzz. "Something to bait their forces out of formation." Voss turned to her, his sharp gaze softening slightly. "What do you suggest?" She stepped closer to the display, her fingers tapping commands into the console. A smaller hologram flickered to life, an unassuming freighter, its hull laden with false readings of explosive payloads. "We send this ahead. They'll think it's carrying a last-ditch planetary weapon. It'll draw their fire long enough for our fleet to position." Voss's lips curled into a faint smirk. "Make it happen." As the room moved with renewed purpose, the scent of determination hung in the air. Engineers rushed to finalize calibrations, their tools clinking softly against the metal hulls of the ships in the adjoining hangar. Pilots prepared for launch, the sharp tang of fuel mixing with the acrid smell of adrenaline. This was not a fight for survival, it was a declaration. Hours later, the ironclad Dawn loomed above Earth, her dark silhouette a monument to humanity's defiance. Voss stood on her bridge, the faint vibration of the engines thrumming beneath his boots. The ship's interior smelled of coolant and ozone, a mix of machine and battle readiness. Around him, the crew worked with the precision of a symphony, each movement a note in the composition of war. "Captain Ward," Voss said, addressing the ironclad's commanding officer. The man turned, his square jaw set with determination. "Ready for launch, Commander," Ward replied, his voice steady despite the stakes. "Good," Voss said. He stepped to the viewport, his eyes scanning the endless expanse of space. "Let's show them what Earth can do." The fleet launched in silence, their movements cloaked in electromagnetic countermeasures. The darkness of space enveloped them, a vast canvas of possibility. The decoy freighter led the charge, its engines glowing faintly as it veered toward the suspected alien staging point. The alien fleet, as Voss had predicted, was regrouping near the Oort cloud. Their ships formed a defensive perimeter, their hulls glinting faintly in the starlight. On board their flagship, General Krynos paced the command deck, his frustration evident in every sharp movement. "Humans," he growled, his voice thick with disdain. "They think a single victory changes everything." "Sir," an officer called, their voice tinged with urgency, "we've detected an incoming vessel. It's emitting high-energy readings, possibly a weapon." Krynos' lips curled into a sneer. "Fools! Destroy it!" As the alien ships moved to intercept the decoy, they unknowingly left gaps in their formation. From the shadows, the ironclad Dawn and her fleet emerged. The first salvo of Earth's attack struck with devastating precision, targeting the exposed engines of the alien cruisers. Explosions lit up the void, sending debris spiraling into the darkness. "Direct hits," Ward reported, his voice cutting through the tension on the ironclad's bridge. "Keep the pressure on," Voss ordered. "Focus fire on their command ship. If we take out their leadership, the rest will scatter." The battle unfolded like a deadly dance. Earth's fleet, though smaller and less advanced, moved with calculated precision. The drones swarmed through the chaos, their sleek forms weaving between alien ships and delivering precise strikes. Artillery ships unleashed long-range volleys, their projectiles tearing through shields and hulls alike. On board the alien flagship, chaos reigned, alarms blared, and the acrid smell of burning circuitry filled the air. Krynos roared orders, his composure crumbling as his fleet faltered. "They're exploiting our blind spots," an officer shouted, panic lacing their words. "They shouldn't have this kind of coordination," Krynos hissed, his claws digging into the console. "How are they?" "They're outthinking us," his second-in-command said, her voice heavy with realization. Back on the ironclad Dawn, Voss watched as the alien formation disintegrated. His chest tightened with both resolve and the weight of sacrifice. Every victory came at a cost. "Sir, they're retreating," Dara reported, her voice a mix of relief and exhaustion. "Let them," Voss said, his gaze hard. "They'll run to their empire, and when they come back, they'll bring everything they have." The fleet began its calculated withdrawal, their engines humming as they returned to Earth's protective sphere. On board the ironclad, Voss stood at the viewport, staring into the dark expanse where the remnants of the alien fleet had vanished. "They underestimated us once," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "They won't make that mistake again." Behind him, the crew moved with the quiet efficiency of those who knew the battle was far from over. For now, they had won. But in the silence that followed, the promise of what lay ahead loomed like a storm on the horizon. The ironclad Dawn drifted silently back into Earth's orbit, its hull scorched but defiant. On the bridge, Commander Alexander Voss stood at the tactical display, his eyes scanning the vast expanse of the galaxy projected before him. The battle near the Oort cloud had been a success, but the victory tasted bitter. Every move they made was a warning bell to the Galactic Empire, and the silence now was suffocating, like the pause before a predator's strike. "We've sent a message," Lieutenant Darakel said from beside him, her voice low and edged with tension. "But it feels like the calm before the storm." "It is," Voss replied, his voice heavy. He gestured to the display, highlighting the patterns of activity beyond Earth's outermost surveillance perimeter. Faint signals flickered, too distant for full identification but unmistakably growing in strength. "They're regrouping, and this time they're bringing the full weight of their empire." In the command bunker below Earth's surface, the air was thick with the smell of overworked circuits and the faint sting of fuel from the hangar bays. Engineers moved with frantic precision, their boots clanging against the metal floors as they loaded munitions and calibrated defenses. The hum of generators provided a constant undercurrent, a reminder of the immense energy being harnessed for the planet's survival. Voss descended to the bunker, his presence commanding immediate silence. The room was bathed in the glow of monitors, each displaying critical data, fleet trajectories, energy levels, and projections of the coming battle. "Give me an assessment," he demanded. Chief Engineer Hannah Moreau stepped forward, wiping grease-streaked hands on her jumpsuit. The defense grid is at 95% capacity. We've reinforced the weak points in the atmosphere's energy lattice, but it won't hold indefinitely against a concentrated assault. And the fleet? Voss asked, his tone sharp. Captain Elias Ward, freshly returned from the ironclad Dawn, answered, Repairs are underway, but the ships won't last in prolonged combat without reinforcements. We need to maximize damage before they can overwhelm us. Voss nodded, his mind already racing ahead. Then we make this fight about their arrogance. Their fleet is massive, but it's built on coordination. We break their synchronization, and we break their power. The room buzzed with renewed energy as Voss outlined his plan. The strategy wasn't just about survival. It was about exploiting every advantage Earth could muster. The Resolute Aegis, an experimental flagship hidden beneath Earth's surface, would be the linchpin. Equipped with an electromagnetic disruption array, it was designed to cripple fleet-wide communications and targeting systems. Captain Ward, Voss said, locking eyes with him. The ironclad Dawn will lead the charge. Draw them in close, force them to overcommit. Ward nodded, his expression resolute. And the Resolute Aegis? It stays cloaked until the optimal moment, Voss replied. Once the disruption array fires, we strike hard and fast. No mercy, no hesitation. Dara stepped forward, her voice cutting through the flurry of activity. We'll need a fallback plan. If the grid fails... It won't, Voss interrupted, his tone absolute. He met her gaze, a flicker of something softer beneath the steel of his demeanor. But if it does, we fight to the last. This isn't just about Earth anymore. It's about showing the galaxy that humanity doesn't yield. The Galactic Empire's fleet appeared on the edges of the solar system like an obsidian wave, their numbers stretching far beyond what Earth had faced before. From the command deck of the Empire's flagship Oblivion Spear, Admiral Niros surveyed the approaching battlefield. His violet eyes gleamed with cold determination, his voice cutting through the tense air. Deploy the vanguard, he ordered. Let their defenses crumble under the first wave. The Empire's ships surged forward, their engines roaring like a storm. Plasma cannons charged, their deadly glow casting an eerie light across the fleet. They moved with the confidence of a predator closing in on wounded prey, their formation tight and calculated. Back on Earth, the skies came alive with the activation of the defense grid. Energy shields shimmered across the atmosphere, their translucent layers humming with latent power. The first barrage from the alien fleet struck with deafening intensity, sending shockwaves rippling through the air. Yet the shields held, deflecting the assault with bursts of dazzling light. Direct hit on the upper grid, a technician reported, his voice strained. Energy levels are holding, but they're testing for weaknesses. Let them test, Voss said from the command bunker, his tone cold. He leaned over the tactical display, his eyes locked on the alien formation. They're playing into our hands. The ironclad Dawn led the human fleet into the fray, its dark hull cutting through the void like a spear. Captain Ward's voice carried across the comms, steady and firm. All ships, maintain formation. Focus fire on their forward cruisers. Break their line. The human fleet moved with precision, their smaller numbers compensated by ruthless efficiency. Missiles streaked through the darkness, their trails illuminating the battlefield. Drones weaved between ships, delivering crippling strikes to engines and weapon systems. Inside the Oblivion Spear, Admiral Niros's composure cracked as reports of damage flooded in. Their tactics, he muttered, his claws digging into the armrest of his chair. They fight like cornered beasts. They fight to win, his second-in-command said quietly, her tone carrying a weight that silenced the room. The battle reached its crescendo as the Resolute Aegis emerged from its concealed position. The massive flagship ascended into the heavens, its hull glinting faintly as it activated its electromagnetic disruption array. A low hum reverberated through the battlefield, building to a crescendo before the array fired. The effect was immediate. Alien ships faltered, their communications scrambled and targeting systems rendered useless. Formation collapsed into chaos as ships collided, their movements disjointed and erratic. Now, Voss barked, his voice echoing through the command bunker. Hit them with everything we have. Earth's fleet surged forward, capitalizing on the disarray. The ironclad Dawn led the charge, its cannons roaring as it tore through the heart of the alien formation. Explosions erupted across the battlefield, each one a testament to the precision and ingenuity of humanity's assault. Admiral Nyros watched in disbelief as his fleet crumbled around him. The cold certainty he had carried into the battle was replaced by a gnawing realization. He had underestimated humanity. "Order the retreat," he said, his voice barely audible. "We can't sustain this." The alien fleet began to pull back, their once imposing presence reduced to scattered remnants. On Earth, cheers erupted across the command bunker as the tactical display showed the enemy's retreat. Voss, however, remained silent. He stared at the display, his chest heavy with the weight of what had been won and what it had cost. "We're not done," he said quietly, his voice cutting through the celebration. "They'll come back, and next time, they won't make the same mistakes." The room fell silent, the reality of his words settling over them. Humanity had won the day, but the war was far from over. Voss turned back to the display, his expression hard. "They chose war," he murmured, "and we showed them how it's done. But this is just the beginning." The silence after the retreat of the alien fleet was as fragile as glass, ready to shatter under the weight of a misstep. The command bunker pulsed with subdued activity, the air heavy with the metallic tang of sweat, ozone, and the faint scent of burning wires. The tactical display still glowed with the remnants of battle, markers for destroyed ships flickering faintly as the last of the alien fleet vanished into the void. Commander Alexander Voss stood at the center of it all, his gaze distant, as though he could see beyond the stars. His voice broke the silence, low and sharp. "They'll come back, and next time they won't be reckless." Lieutenant Dara Kell stepped closer, her boots clicking softly against the metal floor. "Their retreat bought us time," she said, her voice steady but edged with urgency. "But not much. How do we prepare for what's coming?" Voss turned, his expression unreadable. "We force them to fight on our terms. They expect us to defend Earth. We'll take the fight to them." A murmur rippled through the room, uneasy but resolute. Engineers and strategists exchanged glances, the weight of Voss's words sinking in. This wasn't just survival anymore. It was escalation. "Pull up the latest intelligence," Voss ordered, stepping closer to the central console. The holographic display shifted, the galaxy stretching out before him. A faint red marker blinked near the center of the map, a staging point the alien fleet had used in their retreat. "Here," Dara said, pointing. "Our scouts confirmed activity in this region, likely a forward base." "And a weakness," Voss said, his tone grim. "If we strike now, we can cripple their ability to mount a coordinated assault." Dara frowned, her brow furrowing. "That's deep in their territory. They'll have defenses we've never faced before." Voss nodded, his mind already racing. "Which is why we're not sending the fleet directly. We'll use a decoy operation to mask our approach. The resolute Aegis will lead a surgical strike." The room buzzed with renewed energy as Voss outlined the plan. Earth's fleet would split into two groups. The first, led by the ironclad Dawn, would simulate a large-scale assault on a nearby system, drawing the Empire's attention. Meanwhile, the resolute Aegis and a small contingent of stealth ships would infiltrate the staging point, targeting critical infrastructure. "It's a gamble," Dara said, her voice low enough for only Voss to hear. "If the decoy fails—" "It won't," Voss interrupted, his gaze locking onto hers. "The Empire's arrogance is their blind spot. They'll see what they expect to see." Hours later, the resolute Aegis emerged from its subterranean dock, its hull gleaming faintly under the artificial lights of the shipyard. The air was heavy with the scent of fuel and the faint hum of engines, a symphony of preparation. Engineers swarmed the vessel, their movements precise as they made last-minute adjustments. Inside the ship, the atmosphere was tense but focused. The crew moved with the practiced efficiency of seasoned soldiers, their boots echoing against the polished floors. Captain Elias Ward stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back as he addressed his team. "This mission isn't about glory," he said, his voice steady but charged with conviction. "It's about making sure Earth has a future. Every move we make out there counts. There's no room for error." In the observation deck, Voss watched the final preparations. The faint scent of coolant filled the air, mingling with the soft hum of the ship's systems. He turned as Dara approached, her expression unreadable. "You're coming with us," she said, more statement than question. Voss nodded. "This is too important to leave to chance." The decoy operation began hours later. The ironclad Dawn and its fleet launched a simulated assault on a distant system, their movements calculated to draw the Empire's attention. The void filled with the faint glow of engines and the shimmering trails of false energy signatures, designed to mimic a full-scale attack. Back in the depths of space, the resolute Aegis moved in silence. Its stealth systems rendered it nearly invisible, a ghost slipping through the cracks of the Empire's defenses. The ship's interior was dimly lit, the faint hum of its engines the only sound. Every breath, every movement felt amplified in the quiet. Approaching the staging point, Ward reported from the bridge, his voice calm but taut. "Defensive perimeter detected. Minimal activity." "Good," Voss said, his gaze fixed on the tactical display. "They've taken the bait." The resolute Aegis slipped closer, its sensors mapping the alien base in meticulous detail. The staging point was a sprawling network of stations and docks, their surfaces bristling with weapons and machinery. It was a hub of activity, but the absence of a significant fleet suggested the decoy had worked. "Targets locked," a weapons officer reported. "Primary reactors, comms relays, and shipyards." "Prepare the disruption array," Voss ordered. "We hit them all at once." The ship shuddered faintly as the array powered up, the hum growing into a low, resonant vibration. The air in the bridge felt charged, like the moment before a lightning strike. "Fire," Voss commanded. The array unleashed a burst of electromagnetic energy, invisible but devastating. Across the staging point, lights flickered and died. Ships powered down, their engines sputtering in the dark. Alarms blared, their wails muffled as communication lines failed. "Direct hit," Ward reported, a rare smile flickering across his face. "Their systems are in chaos." "Move in," Voss said. "Target their reactors and ammunition depots. Disable, don't destroy." The resolute Aegis and its contingent struck with precision. Missiles streaked through the void, their impacts lighting up the darkness. Drones swarmed the docks, disabling ships before they could respond. The scent of heated metal filled the air as the crew worked tirelessly, their movements synchronized and exact. On the alien base, chaos reigned. Crews scrambled to restore power, their movements frantic. Officers shouted orders into dead comms, their voices lost in the cacophony. The Empire's hub, a symbol of their dominance, was crumbling under Earth's assault. "Admiral Nyros is going to feel this one," Dara said, her voice carrying a faint edge of satisfaction. Voss allowed himself a small nod. "This is how we fight. Not with brute force, but with precision." As the resolute Aegis completed its operation, the crew prepared for their withdrawal. The staging point lay in disarray, its infrastructure crippled. Voss stared at the tactical display, his chest tightening. "They'll retaliate," Dara said quietly. "And they'll bring everything they have." Voss's expression hardened. "Then we'll be ready." The ship disappeared into the void, leaving behind a galaxy forever changed. Earth's gamble had paid off, but the stakes had only grown higher. The Empire would come, and humanity would stand, not with fear, but with fire. The resolute Aegis returned to Earth, its stealth systems powering down as it slipped into orbit. The once gleaming ship bore the scars of its mission, scorch marks streaking its hull like battle-worn tattoos. Within its command bridge, the air was thick with tension, punctuated by the faint hiss of recalibrating systems. Commander Alexander Voss stood at the helm, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. He wasn't watching the return to Earth. His gaze was fixed on the tactical display, where a vast red marker pulsed ominously. "They'll come straight for us now," Lieutenant Darakel said, her voice cutting through the low hum of the engines. She wiped a streak of sweat from her forehead, her dark eyes fixed on the same display. No decoys. No games. Voss nodded, his expression carved from stone. That was the point. We forced their hand. They'll commit everything they have to end this. Captain Elias Ward stepped onto the bridge, his steps heavy with exhaustion, but his voice was resolute. Fleet readiness is at 70%. The Dawn's patched up, but if they hit us with the full force of the Empire... We won't hold, Dara finished, her voice somber but calm. Not with conventional tactics. Voss turned to them, his gaze burning with intensity. Then we don't fight conventionally. The command bunker beneath Earth's surface became a crucible of strategy and preparation. Engineers, strategists, and soldiers moved with purpose, their movements precise but hurried. The faint scent of fuel and coolant mingled with the hum of machinery. On every monitor, the incoming fleet loomed larger, a sea of obsidian ships moving with terrifying inevitability. "Attention all stations," Voss's voice boomed through the comms. "This isn't just about Earth anymore. If we stand today, the galaxy sees what humanity is capable of. If we fall, they see how far we'll go before breaking." The words rippled through the bunker, igniting a quiet resolve among the crew. Even as exhaustion tugged at their movements, their eyes burned with determination. Every calculation, every adjustment carried the weight of a species' survival. "We can't outgun them," Voss said, addressing the War Council in the bunker's central chamber. The room's holographic display projected the incoming fleet in horrifying detail, each alien battleship a monument to Imperial might. "But we can outthink them. They've built their power on fear and control. We dismantle that." His plan was audacious, bordering on impossible. Earth's fleet would not face the Empire head-on. Instead, they would lure the enemy into Earth's orbit, where hidden defenses and electromagnetic countermeasures would disrupt their formation. The resolute Aegis would then deploy its disruption array at maximum power, rendering the Empire's ships blind and vulnerable. At the same time, Earth's remaining drones and ships would target their command structure, severing the head of the beast. "And if the disruption array fails?" Dara asked, her voice a razor's edge of practicality. "It won't," Voss said, though the weight of the risk pressed on him like a vice. "We don't fight for survival. We fight to show them that humanity doesn't break." Hours later, the Galactic Empire's fleet arrived. The void above Earth churned with the glow of their engines, their numbers blotting out the stars. On board the Oblivion Spear, Admiral Nyros watched the planet below, his violet eyes narrowed with disdain. "Prepare the assault," he ordered, his voice a chilling monotone. "Erase them." The first wave of plasma fire streaked toward Earth, only to collide with the planetary defense grid. The sky above Earth ignited with light, a shimmering dome of energy deflecting the alien onslaught. Hidden silos opened across the planet, releasing swarms of drones that surged toward the enemy fleet like a black tide. "Drones inbound!" an officer aboard the Oblivion Spear shouted. "Focus fire!" Nyros snapped. "Crush their toys!" But as the Empire's ships turned their weapons to the drones, the resolute Aegis struck. Emerging from its cloaked position behind Earth's moon, the massive flagship unleashed its disruption array. A deep, resonant hum filled the void, and the Empire's ships faltered. Shields flickered, weapons misfired, and targeting systems froze. "Now!" Voss roared from the resolute Aegis, his voice reverberating through every comm channel. "All ships, target their command vessels!" The human fleet surged forward, their movements a symphony of precision and ferocity. Drones swarmed the enemy's flanks, disabling engines and weapons with surgical strikes. Earth ships focused their fire on the Oblivion Spear, hammering its shields until they shattered. Inside the alien flagship, chaos reigned. Sparks rained from shattered consoles, and smoke choked the air. Nyros staggered, his confidence crumbling. This isn't possible," he muttered. "It's humanity," his second-in-command said, her voice trembling. "They're unstoppable." On the resolute Aegis, Voss watched the carnage unfold with grim satisfaction, but his eyes remained fixed on the Oblivion Spear. "Finish it," he ordered. The ironclad Dawn surged forward, its cannons roaring. A final volley struck the Oblivion Spear, piercing its core. The alien flagship erupted in a blinding explosion, a shockwave tearing through the Empire's formation. The remaining alien ships faltered, their coordination shattered. One by one, they began to retreat, their engines burning bright as they fled into the void. Earth's fleet held its position, battered but victorious. In the silence that followed, a single transmission was sent from the resolute Aegis, its words broadcast across every channel in the galaxy. Voss's voice was calm but unyielding, each syllable carrying the weight of humanity's defiance. You came to conquer, you brought war, and we showed you how it's done. If you value your empire, stay away from Earth. We do not forgive, we do not forget. This is your only warning. The transmission echoed across the stars, a declaration not just to the Empire, but to the galaxy. Humanity, underestimated and dismissed, had risen. On the resolute Aegis, Voss stood alone on the observation deck, staring out at the stars. The faint scent of scorched metal lingered in the air, a reminder of the battle just fought. Dara approached, her voice breaking the quiet. "We did it," she said softly. Voss nodded, his gaze unyielding. "We survived, but this isn't over. They'll regroup. They'll come back." "And we'll be ready," Dara said, her tone firm. Voss turned to her, a rare smile ghosting across his face. "Yes, we will." Earth turned below them, a fragile blue gem that had defied an empire. The galaxy would never forget the day humanity stood its ground.